Hey, Brian White is filling in for Buck Levasseur. Today we're duck hunting on the eastern end of the UP with a Lake Superior State Wildlife Management student who's collecting ducks for an interesting study on the diets of diving ducks in Chippewa and Mackinac counties.
Got one.
Then the trip to the boundary waters of the Menominee River as some young sturgeon get their first look at the real world. And on today's Only in the UP segment, a replacement for kindling with the Yooper Firestarter made right here in the UP. Sit back, put your feet up. It's Monday night and time for Upper Michigan's very own Discovering.
The secret streams that flow beneath the cliffs of colored stone. Forest thick and healthy with birch and pine and oak. Surrounded by the greatest lakes this world has ever known. The black bear's awesome presence as he roams the hills and fields. Call of the timber wolf, the loon's lonesome trill. The eagle soaring high above, the trout lies deep and still. These are what I treasure, the only way I measure feelings that I have for this fine land. There is so much to discover when you're a long-time lover of northern Michigan.
Today's show is brought to you by Hiawatha Log Homes, building dreams one home at a time, and Wendrick's Truss, keeping the UP covered since 1975.
This past week's travels brought me to Sault Ste. Marie, where I met up with Lake Superior State University Wildlife Management student Kyle Point. We traveled south to the shallow waters of Munisquong Bay, where we spent the day talking about his duck study and shooting ducks.
Redhead. Hopefully they do that when we're hunting. Try to set the lines kind of with the wind. I make a V with my two lines of bluebills so that the birds fly up the V. Hopefully they kind of try to land in the middle of it. Try to leave a few places for the ducks to land. Whether they do or not is another story. Well, we launched out of the south side of Munisquong Bay, but all of Munisquong Bay, for the most part, is shallow. Quite a few birds come through Munisquong and the whole UP, really. If you time it right, divers you gotta kind of be there when they're there. They tend to breeze through by the end of October. Most of the bluebills and redheads are gone. After that, it's mostly old squaws, if you go out and find them, and a lot of buffleheads and some golden eyes for divers after October. First week in November is usually really good for buffleheads. Got one. Pretty nice Drake redhead, probably an adult. Their heads get redder than this a little bit, but nice bird. Body feathers coming in good. This is a young Drake redhead. Redhead's starting to come in. Got some gray on the body. A few feathers starting to come through. The tail is really worn out. Young birds, before they molt into their adult feathers, They have a little notch at the end of their tail feathers.
Have you been dreaming of owning a log home, cottage, or camp? We are Hiawatha Log Homes, proudly serving the UP and satisfied customers since 1983. Our in-house staff of professionals are ready to help you create the perfect log home plan. Visit our website or stop by our model home and meet our staff. From cottages to castles, we can custom design to your specific needs. Hiawatha Log Homes, building dreams one home at a time. This portion of today's show brought to you by Superior Welding and Manufacturing, a proud supporter of the outdoors.
As any biology major, fish and wildlife major like me at Lake Superior State University, we have to do a senior thesis project for part of our graduation requirement. And for mine, I just started it this fall. I'm collecting diving and sea ducks from hunters in Mackinac and Chippewa counties, and I'm looking to see what the birds are eating. Part of the reason I'm doing this, I chose this topic, was that zebra mussels invaded, if you will, the Great Lakes starting in around the early 90s, and they really exploded population-wise. Several duck species started eating zebra mussels, and there have been several studies done on the lower Great Lakes, but nothing's been done that I could find on this area, the Eastern Upper Peninsula and the Upper Great Lakes. Well, zebra mussels changed the whole environment in the Great Lakes since they came in. They're filter feeders, and so they take a lot of the microorganisms and things like that out of the food chain. Zebra mussels have been implicated in anything from the long-term decline of the bluebill population to lower numbers of perch in the Great Lakes. Now, their first year hen grader, and they've cleaned up the water so more weeds grow, which probably benefits birds like redheads, because redheads are known to be mostly vegetarians, whereas bluebills are known to eat zebra mussels and eat more animal matter. One theory for the decline of the bluebill was that because zebra mussels are filter feeders, they concentrate contaminants out of the water, and the ducks eat the zebra mussels, and the ducks accumulate those contaminants. And it was one hypothesis that those contaminants were affecting the bluebill's reproductive system, and so they weren't able to lay as many eggs or to raise as many young, which is never a good thing. Young Drake ringneck. It's our fourth duck species today. What I need from hunters, I'll take just their duck carcasses that they've cut the breast meat out of, and then what I do is I cut them open and I cut out everything from the esophagus up by the mouth down to the gizzard, and I freeze it. I freeze a wing from each bird so I can tell species and sex. And then after duck season, once I'm done hunting and collecting specimens, I'll go in the lab, cut them all open, defrost them, and try to figure out what they're eating. And hopefully I'll get enough birds from different locations to compare the diets, say from here, Menominee Bay, to down by the Straits. Got some ethanol here, a little pipette. As another part of my study is I'm looking to see how effective ethanol is as a preservative to stop the digestion. Young Drake lesser scop, smaller version of the graders we shot earlier. Not looking too good yet, a lot of hen feathers in his side, but another one for the bag, another one for the study. I got into ducks when I was really young and started carving. I haven't done too much carving. I've only finished about a dozen birds so far, but you start out with just a block. We do mostly foam, what they call foamers now, out of this pink house insulation foam. They're a lot lighter than wood decoys, so that's one major advantage. And you start out with a squared off block, and then you cut out, you have a pattern, and I make quite a few of my own patterns. You cut out the side view and then the top view of both the heads we make out of wood, the head and the body. So you start off with something like this, and you gotta get it down to something that looks like a duck. Mostly using Dremel and sandpaper a little bit. So this head, this is a hen pintail. This is a Drake Goldeneye. This pintail's head is done. I made the pattern for this one. I gotta tweak it a little bit. Sometimes you have to do that. After you make something, it's not quite the way you want it, so it's just a decoy. The ducks really don't care. I just make decoys to hunt over, shoot birds over. The outside of these birds that are done, it's not just this foam, it's way too soft. We cover them in landscape burlap and tile mastic. You can sand them down, get them as smooth as you want. These are pretty smooth. Or you can leave them a little rough. This one you can kind of see the burlap showing through. It's a Drake Redhead my dad did. The ducks really don't care, but it provides a little bit of protection for the foam. There are competitions, and these two, this hen redhead and this hen lesser scaup, hen bluebill, I entered into the St. Clair Flats decoy contest down around St. Clair in August, and they both took second best in species. I didn't really expect them to win anything, but the judges on that day happened to like them at least a little bit, so now I'm using them to kill ducks over.
Don't miss the Woodtick Music Festival in Hermansville, Michigan. 4 days of great bluegrass, country, folk, blues, and rock and roll. Over 25 bands. Fun for the entire family. Carry-ins welcome. Kids 12 and under free. Buy your tickets and campsites and find out everything you need to know online at woodtickfestival.com. That's woodtickfestival.com. The Woodtick Music Festival in Hermansville, Michigan.
116 miles long with over 100 tributaries. It forms the border between the UP and Wisconsin and holds a variety of fish including smallmouth bass, walleye, pike, muskie, and what is probably its most overlooked species, the lake sturgeon. I tagged along with Wisconsin DNR fisheries expert Mike Donofrio and his crew on a recent sturgeon stalking operation on the Menominee River.
We're here today along the Menominee River just below the Sturgeon Falls Dam, and we're stalking 1,000 yearling sturgeon. Prior to construction of these dams, there was free movement of sturgeons for 75 miles of the Menominee River. Once they constructed all these dams, then they started to block the movement of these fish. And fish can't get upstream from Green Bay to this site. So what happened was when the dams were built in the 1920s, it created some landlocked populations. And there's a good landlocked population between the second and third dam, which we call Grand Rapids and Upper Scott. And then there's a landlocked population below White Rapids to Grand Rapids Dam. This is the only stretch of the river where we stock, is this section below Sturgeon Falls Dam. We don't have a good population from White Rapids Dam up to the Sturgeon Falls Dam. We don't know why. It probably happened decades ago that there's a void here, there's no sturgeon in this section of the river. And we've been stocking this stretch of the river from Sturgeon Falls Dam to Chalk Hills Dam, about 20 miles of river, for 30 years now. This is our 30th year of stocking. So what we're trying to do is restore this population so that we have a spawning population that will spawn below this dam or any other suitable habitat in between here and Chalk Hill. We have these tags in about 15,000 fish right now. They're called passive integrated transponder tags, PIT tags. So it's the same technology they use for tagging dogs and cats at a vet shop. And 809 of them went out today. Every sturgeon that we're handling, we're scanning it for a tag. If it doesn't have a tag, we're putting one in. If it does have a tag, we're recording that number down and then looking it up in our database on the history of that fish. So as many of the stock fish as we can, we try to put these tags in, as well as any other fish that we handle throughout the year. And then the other thing is they're marked, like cut that off with a scalpel. So it's an external mark to identify that's a hatchery fish. We know the length of that fish, we catch it a year from now. Maybe it's 18 inches, maybe it's 14 inches. You know, we get growth rates, really good stuff. Sturgeon are very slow growing fish. The males don't basically mature. It's more of an idea of the size of the fish. Once they hit it in the low 40s, 43, 45 inches, then the males will be mature, and that might be at 15 to 25 years of age in the Menominee River. And the females, the smallest female that we've seen that's ripe is 50 inches. So once they hit 50 inches, those females are spawning. They're in good condition. The males will spawn every year, but they might spawn every other year depending on the individual fish. And then the females will spawn anywhere from their period of spawning is every 3 to 7 years they spawn. So that's why going to a 60-inch size limit, we're allowing those females to spawn multiple times and get as much offspring out of each female as possible. In the Lake Michigan basin, the whole basin around 4 states, this is the main producer right here. This is the largest population of sturgeon is out of the Menominee River right here. 60 plus years, there's been a hook and line season. It's a fall hook and line season. It actually started out to be 2 fish over 36 inches, and as we start to find out how many fish were actually harvested, we've been raising the size limit and reducing the numbers of fish that you can catch. Currently, right now, you can't fish from the first dam right in Marinette, Menominee down to Green Bay for sturgeon, but you can fish all the way up from that first dam up to this dam right here at Sturgeon Falls. And the season opens up the Saturday before Labor Day every year and ends September 30th. And you can catch 1 fish over 60 inches. You have to have a sturgeon stamp to fish, and they're bottom feeders, so they're sucking food up. They don't have any teeth. They're kind of basically extending that mouth like a vacuum cleaner and sucking things up. Fairly easy. You find a deep hole, put on a night crawler, and go ahead, soak a night crawler and sit there with your anchor. You can even bank fish for them if you can find a deep hole. And we have registration stations up and down the river, and it's mandatory that you have to register those fish. The best places to fish are below, between the White Rapids Dam and the Upper Scott Dam there.
It's time for Only in the UP, the segment of the show that highlights the friendly, creative, crafty, and inventive spirit of those of us who live here. It's about that stuff that makes the UP the greatest place on earth to live. Every Yooper is familiar with building a fire, and whether it's for a bonfire, campfire, or a wood stove, we've all had to scrounge up kindling. Well, leave it to Yoopers to come up with an alternative. I met up with Cheryl Ullman of Lake State Industries in Escanaba to find out more about their Yooper Firestarters.
Lake State Industries is a vocational training facility for people with disabilities. We serve about 200 people a year, and we basically are teaching them work skills, and the way we do that is by having jobs for them to do. And one of the big things that we do here is our document destruction, and that leads us to one of our major products that we make here, which is our Yooper Firestarters. The making of the Firestarters is a pretty easy process, but it does take a few steps. First, the empty toilet paper roll has to get stuffed, and it's packed very tightly with the shredded paper. Then it goes over to the dipping station where it is dipped in the wax, and the wax is actually melted in an old French fry deep fryer. So that's kind of a Yooper thing, I guess. And then once all the bubbles have stopped bubbling and we know that the fire starter is saturated, we pull them out and let them drip dry before we package them. They get packaged in packages of 10, or we go as high as 40 for some people, and then boxes of 100 that we sell them in. And they are available in a number of stores throughout the Upper Peninsula. We also have an online store where you can actually purchase the fire starters, and you can buy them in crates or in just in the packages. The greatest thing about the fire starter is, as simple as it looks, it works incredible. You can basically just light one of the ends, and that little fire starter will burn for about 20 minutes. So you don't need kindling. You need one fire starter, and rain or shine, that fire starter will burn for you and light your fire for you. The Firestarter project actually started with a staff that's no longer with us, but she made them with Boy Scouts about 6 or 7 years ago. And when I started here back 4 years ago, I said, these things are awesome. How come we're not selling them all over the place? So my goal was to market them and get them out there, and it has taken off like wildfire, no pun intended. But the Firestarters really have sold well. And the interesting thing, I think, is that a lot of people will say, oh, they look at it and say, I don't know how well this is going to work, but they try it and they absolutely love it, and they come back and end up buying boxes of 100 of them. The other really neat thing about the Firestarter is that it's all recycled products. So it's made out of empty toilet paper rolls that people bring to us, and wax. Anybody that has used wax, old candles that they're not burning, we will always take their old wax. And then the shredded paper. So there really isn't any expense to us in the actual product, but then of course there is in the labor. So it's all recycled products, and once you start using them and burning them, you always need more. You know, one of the things you can do is buy a crate with Firestarters, as small as a 4 or a 6-pack. A 6-pack of Firestarters is always a great thing for the UP. But you can have your own camp name laser engraved on the crate, or your family name, or a fun saying. Anything that you want on that crate, if you can design it or dream it, we can pretty much laser it for you. We have a line of furniture, things like chests and tables. The nice thing is that each piece of furniture is good and sturdy. This is really well-made furniture. It's going to last you for years to come. If you're interested in, taking a look and seeing how well it's made, all you have to do is stop in at the rustic room.
Pick an afternoon this week. Grab your son or your daughter, your niece or your nephew, or one of your neighbor's kids, and hit the woods. Do some grouse hunting or duck hunting. Maybe some scouting for deer season. Doesn't matter. Just hit the woods and share what you know. Well, that's our show for this week. Thanks for watching. And be sure to tune in to TV6 this Friday night at 8 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Central for a special 2-hour Discovering Marathon with Buck Levasseur. I'm happy to say Buck had his surgery and he's doing well. Buck, if you're watching, I'm sure I can speak for all the viewers when I say we miss you and we wish you a speedy recovery. I'll see you next Monday night right here on Upper Michigan's very own Discovering.